Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive or if you think like one and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of Xquadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve even more extraordinary results. Because no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO. In this episode, I speak with Joshua Lachs, who is the Chief Executive of Moneythink. Moneythink is a non-profit organisation on a real mission to change student debt and student financing and helping students thrive in that context. So Joshua is a man with a mission. He's also somebody who's decided and set a real intention to practice leadership as a craft. Now that sounds very lofty and ideal, but in this episode we go into what does it actually mean? What would you actually do? What does he actually do to practice leadership as a craft? And we get into some quite deep topics. Vulnerability, it's a key part. Being a bit exposed. Well, how do you do that when you're at the top of the tree, when you're chief executive? How do you actually demonstrate those kind of things and put them to play in the business? So this is a great conversation. We go deep and we talk to somebody who's on a real sense of mission to impact the world for good. So enjoy this conversation with Joshua Lachs.
Joshua, hi, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Richard. How are you? It's so great to be here.
Hey, this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm really interested in what makes you tick and all about Moneythink, which looks like it's really an organization that's trying to make a real difference in the world. So let's just jump straight in, shall we? Just tell us a little bit, first of all, like what's Moneythink, right? You're the chief executive, but what is it?
So we're a nonprofit based in the US, and we're a ed tech nonprofit, and we basically help aspiring college students with their financial decision making as they go into college and are thinking about college. So we have some really innovative tech tools that we've innovated throughout the last 14, 15 years, and we're super excited about scaling our reach. And so we use those tools to help students who really come from traditionally marginalized and historically marginalized communities who may not have the access and resources to these kinds of tools and access. So yeah, we're super excited to do our work, and I'm super lucky to have an amazing team who pushes us and makes it happen.
Right, so you're helping people perhaps from less privileged backgrounds or potentially other people as well, really understand how they invest in their future, invest in their education, these kind of things. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So really we're taking the idea of financial literacy and leveling up to what does it mean to be financially healthy, right? What does it mean to be financially well? And so we're giving the decision making in the students' hands so they can feel empowered and feel like an informed consumer around their education choices. And so we're doing this by basically giving them the access and the resources to really have that decision making in the immediate sense, but also to be able to build long-term financial wellness habits, behaviors, which is certainly key, right? That goes beyond college.
Yeah. Okay. So fantastic, right? So you're really trying to make a difference in the near term and the long term future of a whole load of students.
Absolutely.
So tell me, so what were you up to before this chief executive role? You know, how did you get into this game?
Yeah. So I joined Moneythink in 2018. I was really lucky to succeed a founder and CEO. My life has really been dedicated to social impact work. I was lucky enough to serve as a CEO at another education nonprofit some years ago, but really my life has intersected around education access, workforce development, and economic sustainability. So I've been doing this game for a long time, pushing the years here. But it really, it's a purpose of mine. It's a huge purpose of mine next to my family. And I love the work that we're doing. And really, Moneythink is a meld for me of what I had done in my background with other organizations, helping to lead those, but also what's possible and growing into that possibility. And I'm at a point in my career where, I've been really fortunate. I've worked hard to put myself and others in hopefully great situations. And at the same time, I'm really interested in this idea of practicing leadership as a craft. And I think that Moneythink is a perfect petri dish to do that.
Well,
let me yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, let me jump in. So tell me, like, what was it that attracted you at this point in your career to Moneythink specifically, right? There's a whole load of nonprofits out there,
yeah,
the businesses.
Yeah.
What were the conflagration of things that came together to make you say this is the thing for me?
Yeah, great question. So for me, it came down to three things. It came down to the fact that the organization, the folks with whom I met, the board, staff, some of our funders who I reached out to prior to my coming on, they all just had this innate sense of curiosity. And as a learning organization, they wanted to do and be better. And that was really invigorating. And along with that was this huge sense of awe, right? What could we do? How might we? So that was one. It was just the people, super, super important, obviously, in any company or organization. The next was, and this is all parallel, the next was how the organization had started to use technology, and specifically human-centered design technology. And as we're now thinking about our future, equity-centered design technology. So the tools that we had built as an organization, as I was really kind of unpacking it, was just really incredible and frankly, kind of game-changing. And then the third, all of that was the promise and potential of the organization. What could we do to really take what's been built in an incredible way by the founders and by the team, and really take it to the next level, and not just scale, but like have a bold vision and create some systems change. And that's going to be generations long work. But I also felt like, hey, if we can't get started now, then, what the heck are we doing here? So it was really those three elements, which were people, the tool, and the potential and promise to really take it with the team to the next level.
Yeah, that's really clear. And I think there's three great angles to look at all these things with. The people, the possibility, and then perhaps the unique factor or the technology, the tool, the framework. I'm curious, was it something you just kind of came across and you went, oh, that sounds like a good thing to get involved with, right? Or were you already on a mission of some description that this then fit into? So did the company create the sense of mission in you, or did you already have a sense of mission and the company kind of aligned with that? I mean, both are completely valid. I'm just curious for you, which one that was.
Yeah, totally. Great question. More the latter. So I have been in the social impact world, whatever we want, nonprofit world, basically my whole career, and I have what I like to think, a spiderweb career, right? I've really had this kind of direct line of sight for a long time around what I want to help contribute to, if that was possible. And really, it's around this idea and this purpose around economic and financial wellness, an inclusive economy, access to tools and resources that, again, a lot of people aren't privy to. And so I had been in the kind of regional and national level education organizations doing some really incredible work. I really kind of dove into the workforce development world, which is clearly related, and working with similar but different demographics and populations. I had heard of Moneythink probably about 10 years ago. I was in another organization serving as its CEO, and Moneythink had just come across my radar, and I was like, oh, they're doing some really cool stuff. And it was really young in Moneythink's life at that point. But I'd heard about them and just kind of took note. And I was at an organization called Net Impact in 2018. I was serving as their chief biz dev officer, and wonderful organization. They're an international organization, and they basically help college students go into social impact careers and really open their eyes up around that. So all that's to say is that search firm basically had reached out to me. Our co-founder and CEO was going to be transitioning out at that time. Moneythinks, I mean, and I was like, oh, I remember these folks, and so I was open to having a conversation. And again, I wasn't looking necessarily to leave where I was. I was in a really great situation, and I felt like the work that I had done all these years, when I took stock of it, again, kind of the situation, the three things that I had outlined before, the conversations that I had had in that interview process just really started to make clear sense to me. That said, Moneythink is also the kind of smallest organization that I had been a part of, and I have been a part of. And, I had to really think about like, what's my risk tolerance as an individual, as a leader, because we were kind of still in startup mode, even though, in 2018, we're about 10 years old as an organization. We were going through some shifts in terms of our strategy at that time when I was thinking about coming on. So I had to take stock of my own, hey, am I ready for this? And do I have the risk tolerance if this doesn't work out for whatever reason?
Right. Yes. Talking about that, because I often have clients, I generally work with people who are in their executive role, but I also work with people who are perhaps leaving that into a new thing, or in that transition phase as well, and trying to look at how they up level and how to live this exponential life, how they, what's my 10x future? And so I do have these conversations, and the question of risk tolerance really comes up, right? Often it's like, do I go for the safe, boring option or the exciting, risky option, right? Those are often the two. When it boil it all down, that's what it comes down to. And what was your decision process that, or when, looking back, do you see that decision differently as you were when you were in the middle of it?
Yeah, it's super interesting. The caveat is that anybody working in the social impact world, there's rarely a feeling of safety, meaning like, we all have to have I think a pretty high risk tolerance, because funding can dry up. While I think that there's a very fine line, and oftentimes the line are blurry around a for-profit versus a nonprofit, and oftentimes it comes down to tax status. That said, that there is some different elements, and so just wanted to name that. I certainly would not have made a different decision. I think my choices at that time were, hey, do I want to stay where I was, which was again a really great situation. Our CEO at that time at Net Impact was is an incredible leader. I loved working with her. Had a really close relationship, and I loved the work that we were doing. And so I certainly could have stayed there and continued to do more. I think again I was at a point where I was taking stock of my own career. I wanted to have another opportunity to be a CEO again. The first time I did it was great, and also I was deer in headlights, and I learned a lot. And so I wanted to take some of those learnings, the learnings that I had had along the way with other wonderful mentors and leaders, and have another shot at it, frankly. And I didn't see it as a vanity thing. It was more like, hey, I want to help, if I can, another organization who is really aligned with my purpose and my mission as an individual. And also that may look, the organization that may look a lot different than what I've been used to. And so that's, I think, where the questions were for me, is like, am I ready for a different kind of situation that's much smaller than I've been used to, that has, frankly, a higher risk tolerance? And knowing that, it may not work out. We're going to give it everything it takes. And I actually felt like pretty comfortable in that decision, because again, I felt like I wanted to be a part of something that was super bold, and that was really exciting to me. And I think a lot of times in life, those big decisions come down to your gut. What is your gut saying? And and let's see where the cards fall, right?
Yeah. But it's interesting, actually, as the more I think about it, I actually always measure risk now, or actually for me, the least riskiest task, the least riskiest path is actually the one where you're going to grow the most in terms of mindset, skill set, and relationships, actually.
That's interesting.
because you take yourself wherever you go. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
well, bet on yourself.
Yes.
And, who knows? Because there's no safe option. Like you can go for the
Right.
biggest corporation in the world and suddenly a consultant can put a line through your business
Totally.
unit. You're gone, or the market can change, or
Yeah.
you get run over by a bus. All these things can happen. And so
Yeah.
generally, my sense on this now is believe in yourself and then
Yeah.
say, where do I build those extra skills, ways of looking at the world, relationships, insights, and
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that you're describing that is, something that I tend to maybe believe about, like, hey, I'm going to bet on myself. It may not work out, whatever it is, but when one door closes, something else opens up. I also, I'm reflecting back at that time, and I was also really, I think, starting to be comfortable around having what you're, I think, describing is around a growth mindset, right? Like,
yeah.
you know what, it may be a scary proposition. This may be a scary opportunity in terms of having that high risk tolerance. But at the same time, hey, what if we went into it, meaning this new role in this organization, with really kind of the optimism and how do we maximize what we want to do, and let's put our again kind of not to use those terms, but let's put our best foot forward and like let's roll it. And we have we've hit some scary times in the last few years since I've been there, just in terms of whether it's financial health. When I stepped into the organization, obviously everybody was addressing COVID, so it's not been all peaches and cream. And so that's where I think true organizational health and leadership really comes out, right? It's like, okay, how are you going to navigate through those really, really difficult times as a person? And when I think back to my risk tolerance about making the decision to go to Moneythink, I think about and maybe that feeling of like, oh, do I want to do this? Is that a really risky proposition? I think about those hard times that we've been in. And again, I don't think, just personally, I would have had the opportunity to work with and really think through these kinds of situations with other folks in a way that we have at Moneythink, and also just again, how is that opportunity to practice leadership as a craft with others and really empower others?
So that's the transition I was looking for. I was about to make the transition. I was going to go back to this phrase you used before, leadership as a craft, that you just brought it up.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? Right. So in your role, there's obviously a way for you where you practice leadership as a craft, and then there's simply another way, which is you could not be practicing leadership as a craft. Yeah. And so how do you see the difference?
Yeah, it's evolving. My idea of it is evolving, to be quite honest. And when I say that, I guess, for me, and I'm just talking about myself, it's not about reading, a ton of leadership books, and although those are great. I think it's really having had the opportunity and the privilege, frankly, of in the past working with two really wonderful executive coaches that have really shaped and influenced me as a person and as I aspire to be a better leader. And so this idea of leadership as a craft, it's, how do I think about and how do I practice leading, the vision on a few different levels, right? Like, how do I lead the vision and purpose for myself as an individual? What's my path forward? What's my North Star that I really truly am committed to, and then it kind of filters out from there in really critical ways. How do you lead the thinking for the organization? How do you lead others by frankly hiring and then unlocking the brains and the people to get us there, right? And for me, like, getting the hell out of the way, frankly, a lot of times. And that takes, I think, a level of vulnerability and feeling comfortable of not needing to have all the answers all the time. And that's been a huge growth area for me, because I started out, I was really lucky to be in a senior role when I was, fairly young, way back in my career. And at that time, I felt like I had to have all the answers because I was literally the youngest one in the room. And so there was a feeling for myself of, I've got to have this, I've got to, be perfect and be right. And I've learned through the years that actually that's quite the opposite. part for me of, and a huge part for me of being what I think about leadership as a craft is being really comfortable with going back to the risk tolerance, being comfortable with risk, being comfortable in that gray area, getting to basically my Zen place about being vulnerable, and in that, knowing that you're going to be exposed to having your ideas and your assumptions challenged. And actually, it's a really good thing, because that, for me, in my experience, has led to a level of engagement with my colleagues that we have some really open and healthy conversations about big strategic choices. And so I think that when I think about leadership as a craft, it's those elements of not just leading myself, not just leading the organization, but really entrusting people to really be engaged in that visioning process and really make that happen.
So when you're talking about vulnerability, what's like the scenario which is the most edgy for you?
Yeah.
Like what kind of situation would make you go, oh, this is where I've got to really do this stuff that I talk about?
Yeah, it's great. Actually, we're kind of in it right now. There are several and many scenarios, actually. But one that comes to top of mind is the equity work that we're focused on in our organization. So, we have a very explicit mission at Moneythink, and that is very equity focused. And it's also DEI is part of our core value as an organization. So, it's really wonderful to have that leverage. That said, we hadn't really invested in equity work and really thinking about what it means to be an equity focused organization with our team, right? Internally with our workforce. And so for the last couple of years, we've been on a really, really explicit journey that I was really staunch about. And this came in the summer of 2020 after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And so I was really committed to saying, hey, we shouldn't just put out a statement. It's not just in our mission as being an equity focused organization, but like, how do we level up? What does it mean to aim higher for us and for our team, that we demonstrate this value? And so, long story short, I put out basically an invitation and a challenge to our organization to step up, and that included me to start with, right? Like it was very much a Josh-driven idea, and knowing that I had to, frankly, get buy-in, which wasn't really difficult, but I had to get buy-in from my team to say, hey, I want to enact these kinds of activities with our team. I want to help create an environment that we're not just saying but doing. And for me, that has meant basically being really exposed and feeling vulnerable. And the example is that I feel like I have been a fairly open-minded, progressive person. I've been in this, line of work for my entire career. Essentially, I'm super dedicated to the cause per se. And at the same time, I have to constantly check that, frankly, I'm a, white male, privileged, and my ideas of certain things, or what I think my ideas are being challenged. And I mean in a really healthy way, because we're engaged as a team because of the environment that we're creating and evolving around, having some really personal conversations and, safe conversations, but about topics that are really personal and perhaps triggering. And so I have to be comfortable if I want to state my opinion or and really listen to other people, which is most importantly the thing at stake. But there's a sense of being vulnerable and being exposed, and my ideas of what about this or what about that are constantly being challenged. And it's a really uncomfortable place to be, but also it's extremely powerful, and it unlocks something, I think, not just for me, but for our team.
It's Richard here with just a quick interlude. If you're serious about multiplying your impact, I have a free resource that you won't want to miss. I've put together a short email course called Exponential Leadership Principles. In it, I set out how you can use the same strategies as some of the world's top leaders to get out of incremental progress and achieve breakthrough results. Be prepared to have your current thinking challenged and to learn some very new ways of leading. If you're interested in following along, simply sign up at xquadrant.com/go/exponential. And now back to the conversation.
I think what I hear you saying is the equity work's important. You in many ways, you have a privileged situation, right, within that. And therefore, the vulnerability piece is about, daring to explain? It could be two things, either daring to express things which you actually think, but which might not be completely politically correct or like could be challengeable, or it could be the vulnerability of going with different perspectives that are not your perspective. I suppose.
I think probably the latter. I really thank you for asking for the clarification. I think probably the latter. I think it's really about feeling exposed about hearing different perspectives, which I am super open to, and then that I challenge myself, like, well, what do I really think about this? And actually, like, does that matter?
Right. Yeah, because if you offer different perspectives and then you basically go, but I'm the CEO, we're doing it this way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And so, and I think that also comes down to, clarity around expectations. And so I feel very vulnerable in those kinds of situations, and that's an ongoing personal and professional journey. But I also feel super confident and comfortable in feeling exposed in that way. And that was for me, the whole idea about feeling vulnerable and actually truly feeling, feeling exposed has been a pretty lengthy journey for me. And actually the best piece of advice I think I ever got, well, two pieces, but they're really related. Way back when I had a mentor who told me, hey, you're too risk adverse. You need to be more comfortable living in the gray because life happens and not everything is all buttoned up. And so I had to check my, Virgo nature. So that was earlier in my career. And that really stuck, though I don't think I put it into practice till later. And then the second piece of related advice, which was just super helpful, and I think that actually really landed, was exactly this: be comfortable about being vulnerable and exposed. And that means that you don't need to have all the answers all the time. And that means that, not everybody can read your mind. So you have to be more clear, quicker about what you're thinking and invite people in. And I'm still clearly working on that. But I also feel like it's a huge, when I think about leadership as a craft, I think that these elements really come down to it, because what starts to happen, and I see it in really demonstrable ways, is that it starts to become part of the culture when your CEO is saying, you know what, I don't know this, but like, hey, let's go figure this out. I think that really empowers a team to, again, like, feel self-empowered as in their own leadership, right? In their own engagement. And like, hey, look, I don't care about owning the idea. If there's a great idea, let's go forward. And I think that's really important to me.
So what would you say to somebody who, is in a senior leadership role and they're like, wow, I get it in theory, but people depend on me. My team, for my, I rose up here because I'm a good problem solver. I understand the business more than everybody else. I have the bigger view, the broader view. People don't have that's such a bigger view. I owe it to them to really provide the answers. I mean, people, because intellectually we can kind of go, it's great to do this, and then viscerally people, have that feeling. I'm just wondering what advice you would give to that person.
No, I appreciate that, and I also feel like this is not without decision making, right? So I certainly, I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I'm certainly comfortable and confident and do provide the answers where possible. I actually think it does come down to clarity around decision making process and being upfront with expectations. So that's where I think the kind of element, the critical element, comes into play, with feeling like, hey, I'm the leader of this organization. I am being counted on. I'm always being watched. every move that I make is being witnessed. So I'm very self-aware about that. And for me, one of the big things that I have learned along the way is like, be more clear about what I expect of myself and what I expect about my colleagues, and be more clear sooner. And really be clear about the decision making. So if there is a big decision to be had, or a small one, you know, for me, what's worked is just the transparency around, hey, here's how we're going to approach this. Here's who, is going to be involved, and here who has the final decision.
Right.
And, in short order, I think obviously there's more to that, but that has, I think, really helped clarify basically, lanes that each of us is driving in, and also so much of it is about choices, and decision making is really about communication and process. And I have been a part of really messy and choppy decisions because the communication and process wasn't either named or clarified up front, or checked along the way. And things change, right? And maybe we're making a decision on this, but we have a really critical piece of new information that's going to influence us. So we have to be open to assessing that and saying, hey, does this change our mind? And if so, what do we do about that? So the clarity and communication around decision making is really, I think, paramount, regardless of what the big thing is. And that really kind of ties into this feeling of vulnerability. Yeah. I see vulnerability as a strength, right? Like,
of course,
hey, we're gonna be open to what we don't know, and I find that actually really empowering.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, thank you. I think that focus on communications and process as the way to actually make decision making simpler and clearer, I think is great. I mean, I always say to some of my CEO clients, like, if you have to overturn a decision, you have a broken process, right? Because it shouldn't get to your level,
right? Only
Only for you to overthrow all the work and analysis and everything else, right? Like, if you can sit there and basically, wholeheartedly agree with anything everybody says to you, then you've got an organization that's aligned.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting mindset to kind of play with.
And don't you also find that there are very few decisions, some of the clients that you're working with that can't be undone, right? I think
it's that idea. It's a Jeff Bezos idea of the one-way door or the two-way doors, right? Most doors you can walk through it. If you don't like it, you can walk back. There's very few where the door slams closed as soon as you go through.
So I try to explain that too, without getting too intellectual about it, but hey, we're also a tech-driven organization, right? So I think the idea of failing fast and learning is pretty key to us. And I've had to build my muscle around that as well, because I used to, going back to what I had mentioned before, I used to be like, hey, we got to have all the things buttoned up. We have to know everything going in. And I've really gotten to a point, to be quite honest, which is let's not let perfect get in the way of great enough. And let's just move forward, and we can recalibrate if needed, with some scenarios that we can map out.
I love that. I think that's like the American upgrade to the European, good enough, right? Like we'd say, don't get perfect, but good enough is fine. But the US, you got to dial it up, bring up the grade. That's kidding. It's great. So let's switch in. I'm just teasing you here.
All good.
Let's move into the quick fire questions. I always like to kind of get into what what's what resources and input is underneath our leaders' leadership. So first one is, what's a favorite quote that perhaps structures you or inspires you, or do you keep telling your teams?
So the questions that actually really inspired me were from one of my former colleagues, and it's really the questions of how might we and what if we. So I just that actually has really influenced me in how I approach my work. In terms of a quote, I think this was a Steve Jobs quote, but it's something around the idea of empower your people to be able to leave, but that they want to stay. Because you're doing some really excellent work. So I think it was a Steve Jobs quote, but that idea has really stuck with me a lot, and that about empowering others.
I love it. What about a favorite app? Is there some app on your phone that you kind of turn to that might be a little bit different from your standard set that you find really helpful?
I know this is not quote unquote professional, but I am I'm all about All Trails, and it's a app that basically you can bring up anytime, and it tells you the trails around that, hiking trails, biking trails. So
Nice.
we're like to do that walk into hiking. So All Trails is a really awesome app.
Yeah, that's great.
Have you heard of it?
Important. I think I've heard a similar one. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Check it out.
Okay, I will. Yeah, that's cool. And it's important because we get creative as well.
Yeah, totally.
In circumstances.
Yeah.
I love to provoke people by saying you can be productive or creative.
Yeah,
at
totally.
Any one time,
Yeah, and how do you bring outside in thinking into your own work, right? So like All Trails has nothing to do with our work, but as I'm looking at I use it, personal and hiking reasons, but like, how do you then take that and think about, aesthetically or like, feature or functionally, like how might we think about putting something like that into our app? So I'm all about outside in thinking where it can happen.
Beautiful. So what about a book that's really inspired you or influenced you?
Yeah, definitely Mindset by Carol Dweck, and it was referred to before, the whole growth mindset idea. So that was pretty influential. And I'm a huge basketball person. So Phil Jackson, who is a former NBA coach, the Bulls and Lakers, he wrote a book called Sacred Hoops way back when. And this is the whole idea around how he's approached leadership and decision-making and individual roles within a team and how to empower everybody within that. And that became really influential for me, and just in terms of how I think about things or try to think about things more holistically.
Nice. Sacred Hoops. Interesting.
Yeah.
Love the title. What about what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Oh my gosh, so many pieces of, I guess, advice. What I call that. A couple of things come to mind. Get myself a personal board of directors who can really help guide me. I think everybody needs an inner circle of trusted folks who can give you the straight deal on how you're doing, what you're doing, what you should think about doing. So that's one, is just having I never had that. And then again, I don't mean to kind of bring this up again, but really be comfortable with not having to have all the answers all the time. And so those are I think, two pieces of suggestions I would give to my 20-year-old self.
Yeah, that's lovely.
I was trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, that's not one adult. Yeah, the board of directors is a great one. I think, we most of us, we don't have enough mentors or people willing to give us hard input or hard and frank input into our lives.
Yeah, totally. We need that.
From that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious about who inspires you as a CEO, perhaps people that you've worked with. So many of our best guests on the show come from referrals. I'm always curious, like, who do you know who you go, wow, that is somebody who I really look up to, or who inspires me, or has inspired me on my journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, I've really been fortunate to have a number of folks, two stand out to me actually, and happen to be on the bookends of the organization that I was with at the time. They're the person who brought me into this organization a few years back, Debbie Alvarez Rodriguez. She is just an incredibly inspiring and thoughtful and purposeful leader. And she is fully committed and dedicated to her life work to contributing to bettering communities in the world. And the way that she really includes and engages people, and again, kind of leverages everybody around her. And she has this mindset, which I really have tried to embody, which is, if we're not doing it, then who is, right?
Right.
It's this sense of ownership and the sense of dedication and accountability. And so that's
when we see it in other people, it does rub off on us, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the whole idea of responsibility and accountability is really, really important as a leader. And I know we didn't cover it enough, but on this episode, but maybe another time. But that really, Debbie really influenced me. And then actually, Debbie's successor, this person, Maureen Sedonen, who's also just this incredible leader in the field. Very different style, very different approach, was frankly antithetical not Maureen, but her approach was antithetical to, I think, the way that I was thinking about things. However, Maureen has had one of the biggest impacts on me in terms of how she went about approaching decision making, how she went about approaching, the kind of health of an organization. And so it was very like two ends of the spectrum, but super critical and super important. And Maureen gave me a sense of kind of understanding that I don't think I had had before. So both people just truly inspirational to me, and I tell them a lot even now how much they've meant to me. So yeah, they're wonderful.
That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you for calling those people out.
Yeah.
Let's talk about my favorite questions, which is no matter how much you've achieved, there's always the next level to get to.
Absolutely, yes.
So
it keeps me up at night.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, for Moneythink, like, what's the next level for that organization? Where does that need to go next? What's going to be multiplying its impact?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, we have launched this product called Decided. We launched it about a year and a half ago. So for us, it's really about mastering the product that we have now and getting it out to as many individuals as possible, and really about scaling this tool. And so we feel like we've got a really innovative tool that we have worked on and iterated on over the number of years. So we're really excited about that. It's just scaling it up. My vision in the next 5 years is to get Decided serving 1 million students and really helping them avoid the pitfalls of student debt. So that's a nearest term goal that we're really shooting for. And so thinking about and doing the work that it's going to take to scale. So that's really top of mind for me and us.
Yeah, it's a very super clear and inspiring goal, right? Helping 1 million students get out of debt or avoid debt.
Yeah.
What will you personally need to do yourself to multiply your impact? I mean, you're practicing leadership as a craft, you're thinking about this. What's your own reinvention that you might need to work on?
Oh, it's such a relevant and timely question, because I'm kind of soaking that in my head right now as I think about, we're growing our team. We're really in a fortunate position to grow our team. We're doing this amazing work with our tools. We're in a position as an organization that we haven't been in actually forever. So it's really exciting and fun, and also a little bit overwhelming. Where my attention is right now is thinking about, where do my energies and attention actually need to shift, right? Over the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, what differences do I need to make where I have been spending my time for the last, almost 4 years? How have I been spending my time for the last 2 years? And then what do I need to shift in order to continue to motivate and inspire, and also be relevant and applicable, right? And really focus on the main thing. And I think, I imagine you have experienced this and could attest to the folks that you're working with, the idea of what got you here won't get you there. And I know it sounds really...
I think I've tattooed it. No, I'm like a stick of rock. I don't know whether you get all the way through. I think that phrase, it's fundamental. Yeah.
I used to not poo-poo it, but I'm like, whatever. And I'm actually like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, because my bandwidth has to change. My focus has to change about where I'm diverting and diversifying my energies. And so that's really top of mind for me, is like how we think about scale. What do I need to do to shift my energy and my focus in order to continue on that path? And I don't have it all figured out yet. I no pretense, but it's very top of mind for me. And so I'm making sure that I'm carving out time for myself now to really think through what that means, and how I actually start to put it into practice. And so it looks a little bit differently, in 3 months from now than it does 10 months from now. But for me, what's really important, just to close out this thought, is what does our organization look like, for example, in the next 3 years? Like, by the end of 2025, let's say, what does our organizational structure look like, and what kinds of resources and capacity do we want to have in order to do the work that we're doing and to meet our goals? And so that, for me, as a backstop, is really helpful to think about, okay, well, if we want to be here, we're going to be doing this, then I have to actually shift my attention and energy to be doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. you're speaking to one of the frameworks that I use is the impact multiplier framework, and I've really got it down to 4 key areas
which
when we apply them to ourselves, our team, organization, they apply to any of these. But there's always a key limiting factor, right, in how we operate, because most people, they just try to hit the accelerator. And they realize they have no more hours in the day. So you have to shift gear, right? And there's 4 areas. There's commitment, right? So the vision, like, am I fully in? What, do I really want this next level? Or do I feel there's other stuff going on that's going to, is the cost too great for the benefits? All those things go in our head. So first of all, there's really getting on fire. That's, if you like, the constraint of the heart. Then there's attention, which is really what you've been talking about. Like, where do I put my attention? Like, what requires my focus? That's really the constraint of the mind. We can't focus on everything. Where do I put my focus? Then there's a constraint of action, which is, do I have the skills? Like, what skills do I need to be building to operate at this new level? What behaviors need to shift? What patterns do I need to break out of? And the last one is influence, because I always say we're never influential enough to hit our goals. Otherwise, we'd have achieved them with a phone call, basically. So with these 4, there's always like, how do we upgrade each of these areres to free us up?
And I know that you've outlined that, and so it's really great to hear you actually just vocalize that, because I mean, frankly, my attention is around those 4 areas, and yet it's also really struggling, right? It's a struggle to try to kind of optimize those. Maybe not all at once, and so I think that's part of the puzzle, right? Of figuring out, like, of those 4 areas,
which one is the constraint right now, which is the one that's holding me back, and then it's an iterative process. You can't work on them all necessarily. You got to figure them out.
That's so. I'm going to be calling you up again because I'll need some guidance around that. But
I love it. This is the game. I mean, this is what I call the exponential game, right? Because we can keep doing the same, kind of a bit more of the same with a few tweaks. And then if you want to do something dramatically different, I think it's asking those hard questions like, well, this is looking good. I'm already successful. And yet there's probably something else available.
And I think like, to your point, it's also, I think one has to be self-aware enough and actually like good with like, hey, here's my boundaries, or how do I start to push those, and what do I want to push? Because I think something could look and feel great, like in theory, and I've got to shift my attention, or I've got to build this skill, but there are constraints, and a lot of those are psychological and mental and emotional. And so how do we navigate through those are really critical. And again, I just think like it's something to name and be self-aware about, so it continues to unblock what one wants to do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, Joshua, this has been a fantastic conversation. If people want to get in touch with you or find out more about Moneythink, how do they do that?
Super easy. Thanks for asking. It's www.moneythink.org. So all the information, it's got great direct links to our tool, which is called Decided. So check us out online.
Perfect. I'll put that in the show notes. That's great. Well, hey, Joshua, it's been really fascinating. Thank you,
Richard,
opening up, talking about these really fascinating topics from ownership and leadership as a craft, and decision making and vulnerability. Then we just, that last area there, we're getting into what does it mean to level up. I think it's been a great discussion. So thank you for your openness and engagement that you brought today. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, totally loved it. And thanks for having me on. And I really appreciate your insights and leadership approach as well. So thanks so much.
Speak soon.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? If you're ready to learn more about our content, our coaching, and our community, then visit us at Xquadrant.com.